PUAs, con artists, and the dark triad. Now this is a very complex and controversial subject. It requires a very subtle touch to tease apart the different threads of it. So to even get into this in the first place requires some background on what all these terms mean. And we're going to start with the dark triad. Now, if you've never heard of it before, the dark triad is something that's often brought up in pickup artist and game circles, basically as an explanation for the conventional wisdom that nice guys finish last and chicks dig jerks. But to talk about the term itself, we should consider where it came from. It was a psychologist, J.M. MacDonald, who first coined it in a 1963 psychology paper, A Threat to Kill. And in it, he was analyzing the behaviors and the pasts of spree killers, of serial killers. And the dark triad was also connected with such things as animal cruelty, fire starting, bedwetting. And it specifically referred to three behavioral tropes that could predict future criminality in his eyes. And those were Machiavellianism, narcissism, and psychopathy. Now, in modern times, with this completely deregulated sexual market that we have, one of the observations that more and more guys have been making is that chicks dig jerks. They dig the guys with the dark triad, those three evil traits. Those are the ones getting all the women. Now, if you went 100 years ago and told somebody about this theory, they'd agree with you, but everybody in society would say that these guys are scum. You know, a real man takes care of his woman. A real man is honest, has honor and integrity. These days, nobody's enforcing any sorts of social norms. And to interact with girls at all, you need to understand at least the basis of these traits, which is a very sad indictment of where our society is going. But now as to why these traits work, many, I think, make the mistaken view that these traits work because women are just feral or they're just venal, and so they automatically go for evil people because their evil babies will have more babies than the non-evil babies. It's a little bit of a reductio ad absurdum of evolutionary psychology, in my opinion. But before we get to that part, before we really talk about why it is that girls go for guys that display the dark triad, it's worth considering what con artistry is. Now, con artistry, the important thing that you need to understand about con artistry is what the con stands for, what a con man is. He's a confidence man. He's somebody that gets your confidence and uses that to steal your money. There's an old saying that you can't con an honest man. You can defraud an honest man, but conning him, much, much more difficult. And to understand how all of this works, let's talk about your typical, the kind of the basic, most basic con of all, the pigeon drop. Now, down below is a link to Michael Shermer of Skeptic Magazine, kind of doing a little video segment about how exactly this works, showing you an example of it on the street. But I'll describe it for you briefly. Essentially, you have two con men and the mark. The inside man, the outside man, and the mark. Now, what happens to the inside man? He goes up to the mark, which is just anybody walking down the street, and he engages them in conversation. Pretends to be a tourist. Can you give me directions? He wins their confidence over. Then the outside man comes in. Once they've established a rapport, the first two people, he comes up and puts a wallet down behind the mark and says, "Hey, did one of you guys drop your wallet?" At which point everybody is now confused. They check, no, that's not my wallet. Not mine either. They pick it up and there's a whole bunch of money in it. Now they get into a conversation. The inside man points out, wow, that's $300 or that's $3,000. That's 1,000 each. He just lets it offhand like that. That's $1,000 each. But we really should try and return it. And he takes the money, puts it into an envelope, which he puts in his pocket. Then he pulls another envelope out of his pocket, which is full of paper cut to the same dimensions as the $100 bills in the wallet. So it feels like the same thing, and of course it's sealed. But now, this is where the trick comes in. So the outside man says, you know what, I'll go into that building and try and return. I'll see if anybody in there lost the wallet. But how do I know you guys aren't going to run off with the money? And so the inside man hands the envelope with the fake money to the mark. The mark thinks he has $3,000 in an envelope, and that everybody here is being honest, and we're all going to split the money if we can't find who the wallet belongs to. And so the inside man volunteers to say, all right, well, listen, I've got a couple $100 in my wallet. I'll give you a couple $100, he says to his cohort. And then they convince the mark to also give the cohort a couple $100. At which point the cohort, the outside man, disappears. He's now gone. After about 5 minutes of waiting, the inside man says to the mark, well, listen, you'll wait here with the money, right? Okay, because I'm just going to go check on that guy. He's been a while. And at that point, boom. They got the money out of the mark. They've still got the $3,000 in the wallet they dropped. They're out $10 for a leather wallet. And the mark eventually realizes that he got conned. Now, there's one critical key to all of this that Schirmer doesn't specify, because they actually were using a real mark and they probably didn't want to be insulting to the guy. And the key is this. A real con man, they get their mark complicit in the crime. See, look at that pigeon drop. What happened there is these three people found a wallet with $3,000 in it. And you don't know who this money belongs to. That could be their first and last month's rent. Maybe they're on their way to a new apartment. It could be money they desperately need. And here the three of them are talking about splitting it amongst themselves because this poor imaginary fellow dropped their wallet. They get the mark complicit. If you're going to be a con man, what you do is you get the mark complicit. And then, best case scenario, once you scam them, if any of you watch Better Call Saul, there was a bit with a fake Rolex where they were conning people. At that point, that mark thinks that, well, he thinks he profited, then he gets away and he finds out he has a useless piece of junk. He doesn't even know that he got conned. He thinks it's just unfortunate that the watch that he stole is not worth very much. He just, bad luck, lucked out, doesn't even know he got conned. In the pigeon drop, the mark might know that he got conned, but now he's so embarrassed that he was planning to steal money from this stranger's wallet that he doesn't want to go forward. He's less likely to go forward, or at the very least, he's going to think about it for a long bit. He's now embarrassed because he knows he did something wrong. So the true con man brings you into his con. And the best way to avoid being conned is be an honest person. Don't do anything immoral. Don't steal. Don't rationalize it and say it's okay to steal a watch from that guy because he's a jerk. Or it's okay because we found the wallet and, who wouldn't steal the money? No, it's still theft. So if you don't steal, you can't be conned. Which begs the question, what does any of this have to do with sex? What does any of this have to do with picking up women? What does it have to do with game or pickup artists? Well, here's the thing. Deep down, we all know that sex is far too powerful. Love, romance, baby making. We all know deep down that these are powerful forces that we're dealing with, and they shouldn't be played with lightly. We see this in all of our entertainment. Horror movies are a great example, where the stereotype goes, it's as soon as somebody has sex, that's when the killer gets to them. That's because the horror movies, the killer is always some sort of metaphor for societal dangers at the time. You have music. Take The Freshman by the Verve Pipe, which is all about the regrets over a casual relationship resulting in an abortion. Or Water Baby by the Sneaker Pimps. You know, that line, 40 days of one night stands, just this profound regret that we're treating sex like candy, like something so casual and flippant. Now, you can certainly go the Anita Sarkeesian route and say that this is all just a social construct being forced upon people, this is how we learn to be ashamed of sex. Or you could look at the fact that this is universal to all cultures pretty much. Big exceptions being primitive Stone Age tribes. The thing is, sex is powerful. Sex is really important. And yet, on a certain level, everybody, saints and sinners alike, everybody wants to have casual sex. We want to have threesomes. We want to, we want to rob, steal. We want to murder people that make us angry. We're all tempted there. And so, think of the con man again. The way you manipulate the mark is you get him to do something he knows is wrong. You make him complicit in the crime. And the exact same thing goes for pickup. Women know deep down in their souls, they know that sex is about a little bit more than just an orgasm. There's a little bit more going on there. But at the same time, they are lustful. Women aren't as direct and obvious as men, but believe me, they are extremely lustful creatures. And so the way you sleep with a woman is you allow her to sin and say that it's okay. It's like, don't worry, babe. I won't tell anybody. We're just having fun. Your boyfriend won't even know about it. You get them involved in the crime and tell them it's not actually a crime. Oh, don't worry, it's not actually a crime to steal from that guy's wallet. It's not actually a crime to cheat on your boyfriend with me. You rationalize it for them. And as long as you act like a criminal, as long as you manifest these dark triad traits, she might just go for it. You are helping her fight against her better nature. This is the word seduction literally means to lead astray. Now, I think it's really worth thinking about feminism in light of all of this. Because feminism is just really this whole ideology built upon self-delusion. Feminism, it embraces the parts of the 1950s. The 1950s was very condescending to women. It treated them like children, but it had all these misperceptions of what women were. That women were virginal, that they were snowflakes, that they could do no wrong. They didn't have all that evil in them like men did. And see, feminism continues to believe in all of this. They continue to promote that women can do no wrong. Women don't abuse their boyfriends or their children. Women don't ever commit rape. She was just overcome with emotion. Feminism is really all about rationalizing women's behavior. And so because we have this feminist indoctrinated culture, we have these women that they already have all the rationalizations in place already. What, me? Oh, I'm not lustful. I'm not tempted to do things I shouldn't do, that I know go against my best interests, that I know are just hurting other people. Oh, of course not. It's just men that do all of that stuff. And so you can really see, when you look at it that way, this whole anti-sex feminism attitude, this attitude, all men are rapists, all men are this, that, the other thing, this starts to make a little bit of sense. Because these women have been so programmed to rationalize everything, and then they go with the pickup artist or with the bad boy, The guy that is just using the woman as a mark, is just using her as a sexual outlet. The true dark triad. And she feels used afterwards. Except she can't admit it to herself. The same way the mark in the con artist game does not want to admit that he got played. It's embarrassing because ultimately if he'd done the right thing, he never would have been played. And the same thing with the woman. When the woman gets played by the pickup artist, she doesn't want to admit that it was her fault, that she gave in to her lust and went after a guy that she knew from the very beginning was no good, but that she needed to get her tingles satisfied. Doesn't want to admit that. So instead she blames all men. All men are predatory. All men are rapists. And so, this sex, which I had consensually, which makes me feel miserable the same way that Mark feels miserable, well, that was date rape or something like that. That was some form of sexual assault because I can't admit that I did something wrong. So the dark triad, the reason the dark triad is so effective nowadays is because women have been progressively trained to rationalize everything. 50 years ago, they would make different sorts of excuses. And, if you go 100 or 200 back, I think people were a little bit more sane in general. But there's always people that want to rationalize things, that don't want to accept responsibility, that don't want to be good people. Because being a good person is hard, even though it pays off in the long run. These women want to make excuses. And so, yes, manifesting the dark triad will work very well with women who are just out for a quick lay and who are going to regret it and hate themselves afterwards. Although if you're really good, if you're a good con artist, they'll never know it was you. They'll think it was all the other guys that are to blame, but not you. You're the one warm memory from their childhood. Same way, a mark that's truly played is going to think the con artists were some of his best friends, and it's just bad luck that he's the one that wound up in prison. Now, all of that said, there's a huge difference between pickup artistry and game that cannot be emphasized enough. Because there's a lot of similarities. There's a lot of the methodologies, a lot of the terms are very, very similar. But see, one is the actual con artists conning all of their students. The other, it's an accurate assessment of what it's like to live in a very low trust society. Let's consider the movie Wolf of Wall Street. Move away from the sexual market for a bit and look at the financial market. Now, Wolf of Wall Street, the story of Jordan Belfort, is essentially how certain deregulation and a number of factors in the 80s led to a market where it was easier to make money as a scam artist than as a legitimate broker. And we're still suffering these effects nowadays. In fact, one of the few growth industries right now is multi-level marketing schemes, sadly. And what Belfort was doing was essentially very similar to a multi-level marketing scheme. Destructive, selfish, not a true enterprise, in an era where true enterprise gets punished. Now the movie ends off with Belfort, after he's defrauded so many people out of money. It winds up with him now giving lectures on how to be an entrepreneur. And early in the movie, he asked somebody, sell me this pen. He asked one of his buddies, sell me this pen. And the guy said, listen, I'll give you a check for $1,000, just need to sign it. Do you have a pen? No? Well, here's a pen, buy it from me. You need it. Look, you see this pen? You need it. Then he goes to the conference, his big speaking engagement. He goes to the guys in the audience and says, can you sell me this pen? And they're like, well, it's a really nice pen. None of them get it. None of them are going to get it. And he knows that perfectly well. He's charging these people $50, $100 to come see him speak about being an entrepreneur and a scam artist. None of these people are actually going to learn. And see, that's the PUA methodology. They have a few good tricks in their belt. They have a few one-liners. They have a few routines and stories that they can teach you. And if you go out and try one of these routines, yeah, sure, it's going to work. But unless you really embrace the dark triad of pickup artistry, you're not going to succeed. You know, you might scam one person out of money, but then the second person, he's going to report you'll be out of business. You're not really going to get anywhere. To be a scam artist like Belfort, you need to embrace the dark triad. You need to understand the psychology behind all of it. And so the pickup artist is not teaching that psychology. Now, in contrast to Belfort, imagine a network of people, and they're not trying to sell you $1,000 boot camps. At most, they're trying to sell you a book for $10. And in fact, most of what they do is for free. And they give you all of these explanations about, listen, the economy's broken right now. There's no production happening in this country. If you invest on all the standard paths, if you try and put your money into these companies where the profits, the price to dividends ratio is completely skewed beyond belief, you are going to lose money eventually. You know, there is no money to be made there. You got to zig when others zag. And the only things that make any money whatsoever are all of questionable morality. And I wish we had a system where that wasn't the case. But I'm not going to go down with the sinking ship, throwing my money after a dead cause. So if you want to make a bit of money, here's how you do it. That would be game. You read one of Ruch's books, for example. About 50% of what Ruch writes about is self-improvement. You know, and this is the very basics. You know, if you want to be interesting to women, yeah, sure, you could put on a feather boa like Mystery, and you could pretend to be somebody you're not. But, you know, how much better to actually go do interesting things with your life? Go rock climbing, learn ballroom dancing, drive a race car, whatever. Read books. Doesn't matter. Be an interesting, accomplished man. Don't just pretend to be one, but actually be one. You know, it's kind of like it's worth doing for its own sake, and it will help you with women. You know, another 30% of his book is just basic charisma. How to speak to people. You know, in Daybang, he actually based upon how lonely senior citizens would approach him in coffee shops. Because he realized these are people that they don't have anything else to do. They feel like talking to a stranger, just having a pleasant conversation. And he started watching the techniques that worked for them. You know, what were they doing? Because these guys were experts at talking to strangers that don't want to talk to them. Yeah, and again, 100 years ago, you still needed these skills. All right, these are skills that, again, with this feminist education and all the teachers slapping boys on the penis with a ruler, men are very lacking in the assertiveness, the natural, healthy sort of aggression of virtue that comes with masculinity. And so sometimes you need a kick in the rear just to learn these skills, not to be terrified of getting shot down. And the final 20%? Dealing with women who on the one hand want to be scammed, but on the other hand think everybody's trying to scam them. And so the only people that can make it through the barrier and actually talk to them are the best scam artists. It's absolutely ironic. Again, low trust society. Nobody trusts the legitimate business, but the really evil multi-level marketing business, they fall for that at the drop of a hat. And anybody writing in the game genre is completely straightforward about this. Is this good for society? No. No, this is terrible. Are you going to get sick of doing it? Yes, because you're acting like a bloody clown to entertain these women. And quite frankly, the sorts of women that you're getting into bed on the first date are not very good women. You know, but even the decent women, low trust society, you need to be watching your own six. You can't be blind about all of this. And so here are the skills. You decide what to do with it. Pickup artist, meanwhile, when he goes out picking up, his mark is the woman. He enables her to do something wrong. The mark when he's giving a lecture are all the chumps in the audience. On a certain level, the sort of guys that go to one of these conferences, on a certain level, A lot of these guys realize they could improve their situation with women just by bettering themselves, working out, reading more, etc. But they don't want to do that. They want a magic trick. They want something easy. They want a shortcut. And he knows perfectly well that the lecture he's giving is not going to turn any of them into Casanovas. But they'll feel like they're a Casanova. In all likelihood, none of these guys have ever approached a woman. So if he gives them a little magic pendant, a little pickup line, a little routine to go talk to women, they'll feel like Casanova, even though they really haven't improved whatsoever. The end of the day, game, sales skills, interpersonal skills, these are just tools. And it all boils down to what you're going to do with it. Even NLP. NLP is completely overstated. It does work, but only for about 20 minutes if you have nothing to back it up. You can have somebody going for 20 minutes, maybe even a couple of hours if you're really good. And then they're going to see through the bullshit. Unless they don't want to, or unless if it isn't bullshit. So folks, do what you will with these skills, with this knowledge. And just remember, you can't con an honest man. Anyway, Aurini out, and like, comment, and subscribe.